Hi, we're going to go over the first page of the assignment for Scientific Method Part 2 right now. We're going to work on that one together. Once we go through that one, I think you will have a good understanding of what you need for the rest of the assignment. All right, so let's look at the worksheet. All right, here are the steps of the scientific method, the way I like to think of them. You start out with a question that you would like to answer. Do some research, which I think is the thinking part here. So you can form a hypothesis, your prediction or educated guess that you can test and measure to try to see if you've come up with a possible answer to your question. The experiment where you do the testing, the data that you get as a result of the testing that you can look at and compare, and the conclusion that you draw based on the data. All right. Did you support your hypothesis? Were you right or wrong? How can this, if you weren't right, how can you modify your hypothesis and try again? If you were right, where do we go from here? How do we build on this? That's what all goes into your conclusion. So this is a bit of, a lot of thought goes in here too, so to show that you understand what you found out. Okay? So we'll start at the top. We're supposed to use Moby's experiment with his plant that didn't look so good that we watched in Scientific Method Part 1. So let's go back to that part of the video.
The first step in scientific problem solving is to recognize the problem. Right. The plant is dying even though it's getting water every day.
Okay, so there's our question. Why is Moby's plant dying despite being watered every day? So you can put that right in here. Okay. Right. Okay, then we will look at the research. All right, research is looking into what's already known about the subject. Okay, what you already know about your own situation. Okay, on yesterday's worksheet, these were the observations and the inference, plus other things you might be able to look up or things that you already know from your own experience. Let's see what came up in the video.
We first need to understand what we already know. Okay, plants need water. What kind of plant is that? Fig tree, right. Now we need to make some observations about the plant.
Okay, so we know that plants need water. Okay, let's see what else.
The leaves are brown and falling off, and the soil is wet and squishy.
Okay, so this is what we know specifically about Moby's plant. All right. Okay. Let's try to format this a little differently here. Okay, leaves are brown and falling off. Sorry. Okay. All right, is there anything else we know? Well, I know that some plants live in the water, like, okay, mangrove trees. All right. Some live where there's little water, like cactus plants. So plants don't all need the same amount of water. Some can deal with it well, some can't. Okay, so we all need that. They need water, of course, for the most important chemical reaction on Earth, photosynthesis. All right, so we're gonna come up with a prediction we can test to what the question is, why is the plant dying? He waters it every day. All right. And since we know some need a lot, some can tolerate a lot, some can tolerate a little, they all need different amounts, maybe Moby's giving his plant too much water. We will see what the video has to say, shall we?
Next, we make an inference. An inference is a conclusion about our observations. From what we've observed, we could infer that Moby is watering his plant too much. Now we translate our inference into a hypothesis. Well, a hypothesis is a testable explanation for the details you observe. What about fig plants do best if you only water them once a week?
All right, now here's what's important about this hypothesis. All right, Moby waters his plant too much is not a hypothesis because you can't test that, you can't measure that. That's just kind of the idea that we think. This we can test because if we only water them once a week, okay, we know exactly how often the water is getting there and how we can also decide how much to put in every week or every time we water the plant. All right, you need a comparison point. You got to be able to measure a hypothesis. That's important. Okay, so we can go put this on the worksheet. All right, now we go to the experiment where we test this to see if it's true, if we can support this hypothesis. Okay, now one thing I have to think about is we can take a one fig plant and water it once a week and see how it does. But does that necessarily give us all the information? No. All right, so it would be good to compare to other watering schedules, especially the one he's already using, watering it every day. Okay, so let's see what experiment they are planning on doing.
Sure, it's just a guess, but after our observations, at least it's an educated guess. We'll need to come up with an experiment to test this hypothesis. Here's the plan. We've got 4 healthy fig plants marked A, B, C, and D.
Okay, since Moby's problem is with his fig plant, we can only look at other fig plants. Okay, very much like the one he has been trying to grow. You can't compare a fig plant to a fern or to a cactus or to anything else.
They have the same type of pot, the same soil, and they're getting the same amount of sunlight.
Now, why is that important? Well, different kinds of pots can let water evaporate from the soil because the pot itself can absorb some water, and then it has little air holes in it that can help do that, okay? The amount of sunlight's important because sunlight's also part of photosynthesis, all right? And how healthy a plant is can depend on how much light it gets as well as how much water it gets. So if we're only looking at the watering schedule, They have to be getting the same amount of sunlight. They have to be growing in the same kind of soil, because different types of soil handle water differently. They absorb it differently. They let it pool in places differently. So if any of that is different from one of these plants to another, that's going to affect how the plant grows. We're looking at the watering schedule. That is the only thing we can change. That's one of the secrets for an experiment in the scientific method. You can only change one thing at a time. Otherwise, you don't know what the solution to your problem was. So, same type of plant, same pot, same soil, same sunlight. Okay, now let's see what's going on.
Variable, or thing that changes.
All right, let's go back and hear that again.
Fig plants marked A, B, C, and D. They have the same type of pot, the same soil, and they're getting the same amount of sunlight. The only variable, or thing that changes, will be the amount of water they receive. Plant A will not be watered at all. Plant B will be watered every day. Plant C will be watered 3 times a week. And plant D will be watered just once a week. We'll check back in a month to see what's happened.
Okay, so here we go. Different watering schedules. Okay, they don't mention this here, but another thing that they should do when they're watering is put the same amount of water on the plant each time that they water it. Don't just take a watering can and pour water on there. Measure the water first, because if you put a lot on once a week, but only a little bit every day, that might make a difference. Okay, so it's not just watering the plants, it's the schedule, the frequency of watering the plants that we are studying here. Okay, so here we go. I type, you type. Okay. All right. Do you think it's important that the fig trees are about the same age, about the same size when we start? Okay. All right, plant A gets no water, plant B gets water once a week. Plant C gets water 3 times a week, and plant D gets water. Oh no, plant B gets water every day, right? Because that's the one that counts. All right. Sorry. All right, now this hypothesis is kind of based on an assumption already, okay? What are we thinking? Based on these different watering schedules, what are we really think we're going to find in our experiment? All right, all right. So they're gonna do this for a month. And we're going to examine the plants and see how they look. All right, now we're at our data, the results of our test. So what are we gonna look for? Well, we know up here, if you water it every day, you're expecting to find brown leaves that are falling off wet, squishy soil. Okay, so that's what we're gonna look at. Color of the leaves, how many of them are there, how are they doing, stuff like that. Things that you can usually assume are indications of whether a plant is healthy or not. Let's go see. 1 month later.
What do you know? It's been a month, and I'm still wearing the same shirt. Let's record some new observations. Huh, plant A doesn't look too good.
All right, what's plan A look like? Well, got no water. All right, almost every living thing needs at least some water. So yeah, it's brown. It's got these 2 dead leaves. It didn't grow. All right.
Plant B doesn't look so hot either.
All right, plant B is like Moby's plant. It's not quite as crunchy looking as A, but we only have 1 kind of greenish leaf. We got 3 other leaves. They're brown. It's all very droopy. It hasn't gotten much bigger either.
Plant C looks a little better.
Okay, see, we got 4 leaves. The stem's still green. It's a young plant, looks a little bit better. Not quite as bright as we might like it to be. It maybe has grown a little, not a lot.
Whoa there, plant D is doing all right.
All right, look at plant D. It's taller. 4 nice, healthy, big leaves. We got a new one coming here. All right, which isn't really where I would expect it. All right, and so this one, it's nice and tall. It's not drooping. So this one looks pretty good. So we can come over here and summarize this. Okay, plant A looks dead. It really just looks dead to me. A month with no water, since it's not a cactus plant. All right, let's just check it out again. Let's see, let's look at plant A. All right, plant A doesn't look too good. 2 curled up brown leaves. It started out with more than that, okay? What did they start out looking like? They all started out with 4 little leaves looking pretty green, okay? And now, all right, so A has lost 2 leaves. Everything is brown. Leaves are curling up, okay? So that's a little bit better. All right, plant A. Okay. Okay, closer look at plant B. All right, hasn't lost any leaves, but 3 of them has turned brown, and the stem has turned brown, and it hasn't grown. Okay? Okay, one's losing color, and it hasn't grown. May have to do something here. All right. And what are we going to say about plant C? Okay. Still green, still has 4 leaves. All right. Doesn't seem to have grown much. And another look at plant D. All right. Bright green, 4 big healthy leaves, growing a new leaf. All right. Okay. All right. So let's see what they had to say about it. And let's see our conclusion. Whoop. Did we support our hypothesis? Yes, we were right. We supported our hypothesis. Once a week is the best. Or no, a different schedule was the best. How important is this? Okay. Now, important doesn't mean changing the world important. It's like, what did you learn? How can you apply this? Okay. How we can use what we learned. What further studies can we do? How can we improve upon this, make more measurements that help us learn something, whatever. The conclusion is supposed to be at least one good paragraph, okay? Could be more. All right, let's see what the guys have to say.
D is doing all right. Time to analyze our data. Based on this experiment and our observations, it looks like the fig plant did best when it was only watered once a week.
All right, now what they did was they kind of drew this picture of the plants, how they looked afterwards. All right, we did it in words. It's perfectly okay to report your data in words, in a table, in a graph, in a diagram like this, where we draw pictures of what the plants look like. Okay, which is close to right. What I would like to have had them check out was this. All right, and this could be an idea for your conclusion for further studies we can do. All right, what did we notice? We noticed in our research that the soil was wet and squishy with Moby's original plant that he was watering every day. We didn't get any information about the condition of the soil in the pot from the video. I think that would be something interesting to look into. If this were a real thing and we were doing this experiment, I would like to see, how did the soil look and feel? How wet did the soil remain? Just how dry was it? Okay, and you could do that since it was the same amount of soil, you could figure out how much water that was still in there. You can tell me for extra credit how you would do that. Okay, so let's see what conclusion they come up with.
From that, we can make a conclusion. Of the 4 watering schedules we tested, fig plants seem to grow best when they're watered once a week.
Okay, so that's part of our conclusion. All right, this one seems to have grown the best. Plant D once a week. All right, was that our hypothesis said they do best if you only water them once a week. All right, so we can start. I'll help you start your conclusion, but you're going to finishing it up. All right. The hypothesis was supported. The plant that was watered once a week was the healthiest. You give me more than that. Okay? Now, here we go. Page 2 of the worksheet. We are just identifying steps in a scientific method, like it says here. He's got some lab reports that are all mixed up. We got a couple of experiments going on. Okay, one that has something to do with apparently dropping a bowling ball. Because we got something here about weight. And here we have something about boiling temperatures. So, 2 different experiments, sort those out. We already have one here. Here we have a conclusion. The results of the experiment show that the boiling point of water does rise as the amount of salt in the water increases. All right, so now we have the conclusion for the boiling the water experiment. There's another conclusion in here somewhere, 2 different questions, 2 different hypotheses, 2 different experiments, and 2 different sets of data. All right, you sort them out, just put the right letter on the blank like that. Okay, page 3, expand on that a little bit. Okay, and question 14. goes back to something we talked about last week in scientific process. Part 2, repeatability, reproducibility, or falsifiability. Okay, we're talking about something called peer review when other scientists look at your work to determine whether you did a good job or not. Right? You can always go back and read this passage again and take care of that. All right? Let me know here in Google Classroom or on Remind if you have any questions. And I look forward to seeing what you have to say. Bye.